After being on the market for 12 years, Michael Jordan, the basketball player, has finally sold his mansion in the Highland Park area of Chicago. It's an amazing story, not about Michael Jordan and basketball, but about real estate, and gives us great insight into what works and what doesn't, and why so much of what we're told about the real estate industry is wrong. We're going to learn why so many of the truths that we're told about real estate are not true. I'm Bill Gross. This is my weekly real estate market update. I do this every week, and we have this on YouTube and social media and such. Before we get into the story of Michael Jordan, let me quickly kind of reset where we are as far as the market and the statistics. We do this every week to make sure we know where we are in the marketplace. In the real estate market, we have supply and demand is measured by mostly interest rates and buyers being interested in buying properties. Interest rates inched up a bit today, or this week, closing just below 7%. So they went up about 0.25% from 6.69 to 6.95, still below 7, still in the range of where they've been for the last year. So the interest rates still are a range where buyers should be in the market and interested in buying properties. Now, on the seller side, on the the supply side of the equation, which is how many properties are available for sale, demand continues to drop. Now, this is seasonal, meaning we see every year at this time of year, oops, we lost your spot, that the number of houses for sale goes down as sellers pull their homes off the market. That's not unexpected. And even still at these numbers, it is below any number of the pre-pandemic era, meaning other than 2020 March, we've always had more homes for sale than we have now. These are historic lows. As long as that's the case, the real estate market can't crash. Prices cannot, dive down. They might adjust down. They might plateau a little bit or might not keep up with inflation. Locally in Los Angeles, a real quick update there is we are staying at a slight seller's market. We're at 35 using Altos Research. We've been as high as 40 in the last year, and this inch down month over month, now down to about 35. It just tells us that we're still in a seller's market, but less so than we were. And as such, we have to get ready for the new reality, which is maybe things turn around, maybe things change. We'll see. Now, let's talk about the Michael Jordan home for sale. Rarely does a news story so perfectly explain, I think, almost the entire industry. This property, it was on the market for 12 years. Every major real estate national luxury specialist took a shot at this one time or another and touted that they were going to get it sold. It's just really amazing. He had bought the property for we bought it and improved it, put $50 million total into it in 1999 when he first bought it. He lived there for 13 years. And 2012 moved out and attempted to sell it at that time and put in the market at that time for $28 million. Now, if you look at how inflation has been since 2012, a house for $28 million in 2012 would be like a $78 million listing today. It was a ridiculous number back then, it's a ridiculous number back now. Now, of course, somebody may have paid for it, but in essence, they didn't. So a few points before we get into the details on this. Number one, I'm not a Michael Jordan fan. I'm not a Michael Jordan hater. I don't really have strength. He's obviously an amazing player. As somebody who's watched basketball my whole life, I saw Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell live, Elgin Baylor, Jerry West, the logo, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird live in person. Michael Jordan is unquestionably one of the greatest basketball players of all time. One of the most amazing sports businessmen of all time, worth about $3.5 billion. So we're not going to cry over this for him. But I just want to say my analysis here is strictly as real estate. Next, I want to say no property has ever had more exposure, in my experience, than this one. And how can I say that? Well, Michael Jordan is one of the most famous athletes in the world, one of the most famous business people, celebrities in the world. And it's been 12 years. Usually a home is on the market at most a couple times for a couple years, 3 years, 4 years. This is really an amazing story. It had so many Hall of Fame luxury agents who are the greatest agents with the greatest black books in the world, with photos and marketing and every major industry piece. So as a result of all that, let's take a look at, I think, a couple of truths we can take away from this and learn from that affect our real estate business. Number one, the property is not worth the list price. The problem is oftentimes sellers think because they listed it for something, that's what it's worth, and buyers should look at it as such. And that's not true. All the list price is what the seller is saying they want to get for the property. Now, we all want things in life. I wanted to play basketball for the Lakers. I never did. But it doesn't mean you're going to get it. What's fascinating about this, though, is I think the real estate news industry supports this. So, for example, let's take a look at, here's the New York Post where they talk about selling the property. Let me pull it up real quick. Michael Jordan finally sells his $14.8 million mansion. It's not a $14.8 million mansion. That was the last list price. It's sold for $9.5 million. But notice they refer to it as a $14.8 million mansion. Here's another story. This is from TMZ. Finally, buyer for his $15 million Chicago mansion. Again, it sold for $9.5 million. In fact, in the article, it says somewhere, they know it sold for $9.5 million. Last listing price was $14.85, but he knows it sold for $9.5 million. Maybe it went to escrow and they reported it, but it's not worth $15 million. It didn't sell for that. Here's another one. This is the Wall Street Journal. Still for sale 12 years later, Michael Jordan's $15 million mansion. Now, this was before it sold. So they refer to it as that price, but just because that's what they refer to it does not mean that's what it's worth. That's just what the seller's asking for it. It's worth what it's worth. It's not worth a penny more. And so one of the things that sellers need to do, and as agents, we need to help our sellers understand is the property is worth what the property is worth regardless of what the list price is. This is like when, if you're married, now if you're a wife, I don't mean to offend you, but as a husband, I've had this experience with my daughter or wife was like, oh, I saved a lot of money on a dress. Well, tell me the story, honey. Yeah, I went to Macy's and it used to be listed, it was for sale at $300, but he marked it down to $120. It's a $120 dress. It didn't sell for $300. It's not worth $300, or someone would have bought it for $300. Michael Jordan's mansion was not worth $15 million, or someone would have paid $15 million. It was worth $9.5 million. So it's the same concept. You can't make money by buying something for less than it's listed for. It's worth what you pay for it. Number two is what you pay for property has nothing to do with what it's worth. A seller will often say, well, I bought it for this, and then I put in this. In Michael Jordan's case, I think he bought the property for $11 million in 1999 and put in $39 million. He was into the property for a total of $50 million. Now, he's one of the wealthiest men in the world. He's worth $3.5 billion. Good for him. Enjoy what you want. He put in pools and lakes and helipads and basketball courts and cigar rooms. Great. I hope he enjoyed them. Because as a seller, when you put value into your property, you need to put in because you want the enjoyment out of that property, not because you expect to get back a return on your investment. Very rarely do amenities come back to you worth something. Now, there's exceptions to every rule, but in general, a retail value of a property has nothing to do with what the cost to build a property was. It's worth what the market is, what competitive properties sell for. So here's a case where I am sure whoever was in charge of Michael's team on this said, hey, we paid $50 million for it. It's got to be worth more. Has nothing to do with what it's worth. It's worth what it's worth as it sits, not the money that you put into it. Number three inside of this is auctions. Many auctions are gimmicks. There's two types of auctions. There's what I would call mostly government auctions related to foreclosures, bankruptcies, and probates. And there's no reserve price. And what that means is they're putting it for auction, and whoever shows up with the most money wins that property. But when it's a reserve price, often the auction starts at a low price, but the seller really won't sell it unless it gets over a certain price. That's called a reserve. And of course, this property, like many gimmick luxury properties, they fall for auction. That will create a lot of energy, a lot of drive for your property, a lot of competition. And the truth is it doesn't. This property is worth what it's worth, and people will not overpay, maybe by $100, $1,000, $10,000. They're not going to pay by millions of dollars just because it's an auction. It's a gimmick. It's a gimmick to sell property at auction, at retail, thinking you can get more just because you create that experience. And my experience, and again, if I'm wrong, show me the numbers, show me the data, because I look at the data of these things, I don't see it. Number four, marketing gimmicks are just that, they're gimmicks. No house ever had more gimmicks than this one. This one had, cigars that Michael Jordan supposedly had bought and was going to smoke. It came with a set of each of the Jordan shoes. Like, you bought the house, you got every one from Michael Jordan 1s, 2s, 3s, all the way that sneaker collectors would have been impressed with, right? Because of the argument, we have so many buyers from China They created videos in Mandarin specifically for this property back when that was expensive and difficult to do. But the gimmicks don't sell the property. The property is worth what the property is worth. Real estate today is such an efficient market. You list a property, it's on thousands of websites within an hour. Every photo you put up is thrown throughout the internet. Every buyer uses 2 or 3 different sources to look at properties. And a gimmick isn't going to get more than the broadest possible exposure we'll get for the property. Number 5, staging doesn't raise the price of a home. Now, this is a common one. There are a couple fake studies out there that says staging does. But when you read the fine print, what they talk about staging is spending $500 or $1,000 to do cleanup, get rid of garbage, get rid of rats, get rid of smells, get rid of rotten food. There is no data that I've seen, and if I'm wrong, send it to me, that says that putting in furniture fools a buyer into overpaying for a property. This house was the most beautifully staged house ever. It had amenities. It was a 35,000 square foot home. It had every possible amenity, right? Every buyer could imagine every single room being used to their personal status. It was videoed and photographed. But the staging doesn't change the value of the property because buyers inherently know they're buying a house, they're not buying that furniture, unless they're buying the furniture also. I know a company that has a staging company and they sell furniture in those houses. But the houses don't sell for more, they make money selling the furniture. But staging does not raise the value of a property. And nowadays you can do virtual staging. You can have photographs and put in fake furniture to make it look staged. I had a property where the backyard, the pool was empty. And so we were able to take pictures of the backyard with a virtual pool that looked nice. We had to tell the buyers, hey, the pool is emptied. If you want us to fill it before we close escrow, we will. But for safety reasons, we kept it empty. But staging will not raise the value of a property. Number 5, this is a common one. This one just is very aggravating. Superstar agents don't really have a special list of buyers. No individual home has ever had a secret buyer who had a secret list, a secret agent had a secret list of buyers that buy a property for more than it was worth. Why is that? I had this happen to me once where, in fact, recently, I had a seller, prospective seller say to me, well, this agent really works this area of Hollywood Hills. And they have a list of exclusive buyers that they bring good deals to. And I said to him, well, do you realize what you just said? They're bringing your house to the buyer, their customer, as a good deal. Now, if that's my customer and I'm bringing him a good deal, that means below market. Don't you want a great listing agent to sell your house at market price to get top dollar? Or do you want that special agent to give your property to their other customer as a good deal? Which one do you want? There's no magic list of buyers. In fact, today, before you can even get out to your customers, once the property is listed, everybody sees it. And that's the power of the internet today. It's the power of the real estate industry, which is so competitive and such a free market. Okay, now my favorite, wouldn't be a Bill Gross video without trashing Zillow and Redfin. Number 8, Zillow and Redfin automated estimates are not accurate. Let's take a look at this one. Now, granted, this is a very difficult property to estimate the value for. I'll give Zillow a little bit of credit there. The estimate, imagine this, $9.5 million. Wow, Zillow, you're so accurate. Sold for $9.5 million, and you estimate that it's worth $9.503200. You're so accurate. Well, not really. If you scroll down under their, where was this here, home value, you'll see that over time, where was it? I'm sorry, I'm a little slow with this. The history, this estimate, oh, I lost my spot. That's a shame. So what I had here, I had opened up, was the Zillow history price. And the Zillow estimate tracked almost exactly where the list price was. Why don't I have that here? Hold on one second. Hold on one cotton picking second. Home value, Zillow per square foot, Zillow range. Oh, here we go, Zillow history. There we go. Zillow had estimated this property at one time as high as, can we go that high? 14.5 million. You see it drop and then go back up, drop down to 4 million, back up, drop down to 4 million, go back up. As late as 2020 was 13.5 million. As late as 2021 was 12.9 million. For some reason, dropped down to 5.2 million. And then, of course, as soon as it sells, they raise it back up to 9.5. So Zillow's going to tell you, oh, our estimate's accurate. We have 9.5 million. They were wrong on both sides by $4 million almost the entire time. They never estimated between 12 and 6 million, not once. I find that hysterical. So what's happening here? Well, this is a unique property, right? And they estimate per square foot, which is what it sold for, $291 per square foot. So this is about where the market is. It's a little below the average in Highland Park, but this is a much overbuilt property for the area. There's no other home that's sold in the last 12 months in the zip code for over $2 million. So this isn't Beverly Hills. This is not Palm Beach, Florida. This is Highland Park, Chicago. I'm sure it's a nice area for people to live there, but they're not homes that sell for $28 million, $10 million, $15 million, $9 million regularly there. And therefore, there's no data. The data has nothing going. But this is an exaggeration of the reality of most properties that Zillow doesn't really know. It only is going on the data points that it has. And this exaggerates the inaccuracy, I'll admit. But this is the problem with Zillow, that every property is somewhat different. If you're in a tract area of homes, the Zillow estimate is very accurate. Where I am in LA, where every house is different, it might not be this inaccurate, but it is similarly wild and way off. So I would just say in general, the Zillow estimate should be taken with a grain of salt. Now let's take a look at Redfin. Similar problem, but on a different spectrum. Let's see, let me pull it up real quick. Here we go. So Redfin estimates this property at $4.5 to $5.2 million, which is really odd for a 32,000 square foot home. They're showing it about a third of the average in the market. Again, it's way overbuilt, granted, way overbuilt for the area. And it's going to be in the market for a while because it's so rare for homes like that to be built. But you would imagine a top, pitcher for a baseball team or a basketball player or a football player in the Chicago area might buy the house just for its size. And they may not appreciate all the Michael Jordan stuff. In fact, I think that's probably the problem. Is that, if you are, let's say, the new quarterback for the Chicago Bears or the new star for the Chicago White Sox, you might be able to afford a home for $9 million. These guys get paid $30, $40 million a year, but they're not going to want a tribute to Michael Jordan. They're going to want their own tribute. And that's the challenge of this house. But at 4.5 million, it's obviously ridiculously low. It's sold for $9.5 million. And so it shows you how the Redfin number is similarly way off and so difficult to market. Now, what's also interesting is if you look at the history, they had marketed all along and estimated it at 6.9, back in 2020 at 5.8 million. The highest they'd ever been, they came over 10 million for a little bit in 2022, and then had been below 5 million for the last 2 years. Shooting way up and it got relisted. Now, the only change of data here is that it relisted. And then eventually they brought it down for some unexplained reason to being worth $5 million after it sold for $9 million. So again, no real explanation as to why Redfin's algorithm is so far off. And you might think somebody at Redfin would look at this and say, hey, we have a problem here. If we're estimating a house that sold for 9.5 to be worth 4.6, somewhere along the line we're missing the market. And the numbers in the data just don't add up. So again, this is just an example, I think, of the data. Redfin and Zillow are interesting data points, but they're not going to be determinative. They're not that accurate. They're not as accurate, any more accurate than taking homes that sold and comparing them to the house you have in your hand. Number 9 is the exaggeration of the importance of photos and video. Because you'll often see agents say, oh, the problem with the listing was the photos weren't good enough. There weren't enough photos. Oh, you need a drone shot. Oh, you need a video. You need a high-end video. Big mistake, because there's no house that ever had more photos and video than this property. And it goes to show that sometimes you can have too much, or certainly not having enough isn't the problem. The goal of the photos or videos are to get buyers into the property. It's kind of like a woman's dress. If you show too much, you take away the mystery. You want to have enough showing to invite examination, but you don't want to have so much that it becomes just plain pornography. And I think with photos and videos like this, you show so much that perhaps a Michael Jordan fan, enjoyed watching the video more and got satisfied and didn't want to buy the house as a result. You want somebody to go in the house and experience the property in person. It's a unique house. Also, people only go to so many homes. So once you get them in your home, the odds of you selling it have gone up tremendously. And so this is a perfect example of where you can have all the photos and the videos in the world, and in some cases it works against you. The goal and the reason why this happens is these agents are not doing the photo and video to sell that house. They knew it was way overlisted. They never really imagined they'd sell it anywhere near that price, and the seller told them they wouldn't accept less. They do the photos and video to get their next listing. And so many of these retail agents, their strategies are to use your home for sale to get more business rather than focusing on getting your home sold for top dollar. Sometimes selling your home means using sharp elbows, upsetting neighbors, upsetting other agents. Do you want an agent with the courage to do that, or do you want an agent using your home as their marketing platform for the next property? So what are the conclusions from this whole, there's the Redfin. I guess I didn't show that number. Again, Redfin had their estimate 5, 7, 8 million, then down below 5 million and jumped up when it was listed to 17 million, and then now they're down to 5 million. So that's the Redfin number. Okay, so what are our conclusions? Number one, this home sold for less than you expect because it's so overbuilt for the market. You would expect a home in this market to sell, I think, for about $291 per square foot. And so at that price, it should have sold for about $12 million. It sold for $9.5 million. And so the challenge there's a couple reasons why that you can just see that when you overlist it, in this case, this is point number two, the listing price probably deters buyers because when you list it for 17 million, buyers who might pay 10 or 11 million, many aren't going to want to waste their time. Now, there are some that will. But many buyers don't waste their time because they say, well, why would I look at a $17 million house when I can't pay more than 10 or 11? You're just trying to push me up. And so they didn't get certain buyers who might have paid 10 million, 11 million, 12 million because they listed it for 14.8 at the end and even higher than that before that. And so it sold for less than you expect, which would have been about 12 million. And one of the reasons why is because they overlisted. Another conclusion is that they kept buyers out by requiring a non-disclosure agreement. Now, I can understand, if there's personal items in the property, but he was out of the property for 12 years. There is no reason why you should need a non-disclosure agreement to see a property that you're selling in the open market and you're selling to open buyers. Non-disclosure agreements are also so limited. Like, are you going to litigate if somebody violated it? Let's say a journalist or TMZ or somebody finds something in there and they want to violate it. I don't think so typically. And so I don't think the NDA really works to help the seller in this case. And what it does do is there's some buyers say, I don't want to sign a non-disclosure agreement. I'd have to have my attorney review it. And obviously, if I see a property, I want to talk about it to my friends and family and see if there's interest and see if it's worth it and get their opinion. And so they discourage people from seeing it. Number four is the amenities are always worth more to the seller than the buyer. In this case, you had a cigar room. Now, I used to smoke cigars. I don't anymore. But obviously, and Michael Jordan's known for enjoying cigars. Good for him. But many buyers don't. Well, to most buyers, that's a wasted room. Pools and other amenities in more normal houses. Some people appreciate them, some don't. But the seller always appreciates it more because they're the ones who bought and designed that amenity. And you can't expect a buyer to be willing to pay as much as you did for that particular amenity. In this case, also, Michael Jordan left the property in 2012, so the amenities were designed and the technology was at least 12 years old. So whatever was in there was dated and was not current, was not up to date. And always a seller buying a property is going to make it their personal tastes. I would imagine the buyer here is not a Michael Jordan collector. It's just a big house. They got a lot of amenities, a lot of size and such for the money. Number five, there's no amenity that you can spend money on that will yield you a profit. This is a big mistake sellers make all the time. I try talking about spending more money. I would say secure the property so we can show it and safely show it. Keep squatters out. But to put money into a property to make it better, to update the air conditioning, the new buyer might want more air conditioning. They may not appreciate the money you spend for it. But more importantly, you're going to get about 50, 60 cents on the dollar you spend. It's a great tool I use called the Journal of Light Construction, formerly Remodeling Magazine. And they take by areas, individual projects, what they cost and what they yield at sale. And you'll see there's almost nothing you can do to add value to your property more than it's worth. Now, if you enjoy the amenity, put it in. But don't think you're going to fix a property up and get more than you spend by painting it or redoing the cabinets. You're not a wholesaler. You're not a flipper. You're buying things at retail. You're buying your labor at retail, and it just does not work that way in terms of economics. Number 6, it's always the price. Anytime a home doesn't sell, it's always the price. Oftentimes I have sellers who've been in the market, and I talked to one last week. He had 2 properties worth $6 million in Hollywood Hills, and he hasn't put them on the market yet. He's been playing around with them since October. He's going to get them ready, get on the market in February because the market's better. And I just said to him, look, it's all going to get down to the price. It has nothing to do with the timing of the market and the amenities you're putting in. It's always the price. And so here's a case where you see a property, even though it was listed for $28 million and $17 million, Michael Jordan, and you had it in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, every major magazine, every luxury magazine. And at the end of the day, the buyer who bought it paid for what the property is probably worth and not anymore. So what should you do? Well, I think when you're selling property, you want to price it right. You want to do everything you can to maximize as many people seeing it as quickly as possible. So for example, some sellers say they want to wait until after the Super Bowl. Well, if you're living the property and enjoying it, that might make sense. If you're in the property with your kids in this holiday period, okay, that makes a lot of sense. But if it's vacant, I don't believe waiting until February will yield you more than the assets going to sit around empty for 3 or 4 months. Statistics don't bear that out. So what should you do? I think it's always about fundamentals. It sounds nice to use a gimmick, but it's always about hard work, communication, transparency, and working together. And if I can help you, whether it be buying or selling a property, reach out to me. I'm at Bill Gross Probate on social media. BillGrossProbate.com is my website. Call, text, or email me if I can help you. And as always, make today your best day ever. Thanks.